Opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
I'm not in charge of DPS. I'm not in charge of the government.
Tonight on Politics Now, Adam Laxalt defends himself from charges he won't enforce the gun background check initiative.
We didn't put the policies in place. It doesn't belong to any one person.
Despite a blemish at the end of his career, longtime tourism chief Rossi Rollencotter gets plenty of praise and a big retirement check.
Plus, how a Nebraska execution could play a large role in whether Nevada moves forward with its own plans to put convicted killer Scott Dozier to death.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now with Steve Sebelius and Patrick Walker.
Well, Nevada Attorney General and Republican gubernatorial candidate Adam Laxalt defended himself on question 1 during a radio interview this week. Thanks for joining us. I'm Steve Sebelius.
And I'm Patrick Walker. Laxalt appeared on Alan Stock's radio show on KXNT Wednesday from the Emerald Island Casino in Henderson. Laxalt rebuffed criticism over his role in enforcing the gun background check initiative, which is on hold right now because the law voters passed specifies that the FBI is supposed to perform the background checks. The agency has said numerous times that it will not. Nevada already conducts background checks that use the state and the federal database.
I am the Attorney General of this state. My role in question 1 was very, very small. I was asked by a state agency, the Department of Public Safety, that currently does background checks in our state. What do we do with this ballot initiative? And we said, you know, if the FBI won't do this, it's hard to see how this is enforceable. It is a non-binding opinion. I'm not in charge of DPS. I'm not in charge of the government. We issued a small, a narrow legal opinion to a client that says, we got to get you guys need to get the FBI on board, or else it's hard to see how this goes forward.
So Laxalt also addressed education funding and school safety, which he considers top priority. So Steve, that is Laxalt's probably his most articulate answer to questions about question 1 that we've seen so far. What do you make of his contention there, of his argument?
Yeah, I mean, he's had a lot of time to figure out this question because he's been asked repeatedly. But there's a lot of problems with the initiative, but they stem from the drafting. They did that to avoid having a fee in that initiative. It very narrowly passed, and if it had a fee, it probably wouldn't have passed at all. But none of those things are Laxalt's fault in terms of implementation.
Well, while Laxalt was campaigning in the southern part of the state, his opponent in the governor's race, Democratic Clark County Commission Chairman Steve Sisolak, was up north in Reno campaigning with Raiders president, Mark Bedane.
The group toured sites that are being considered for a summer training facility for the Raiders. Sisolak says he's excited for the chance for Northern Nevada to get to be a part of Raider Nation during the off-season.
We're the silver state, and I want to make the silver and black state because the Raiders are such an important part of what we have here. It's moved us into a whole new stratosphere in terms of how we're viewed. And as Mike said, there is a lot of economic development diversification that comes along with the Raiders.
Well, Sisolak has been a big cheerleader of the Raiders coming here, and Bedane and other Raiders have been campaigning for Sisolak's gubernatorial campaign.
So, Steve, let's talk about Governor Sandoval's announcement this week. Is he going to be endorsing anybody? He says he's not necessarily going to issue one, but what does that mean?
Yeah, no. On Thursday, he told me that he's not going to be involved at all in the governor's race. It's pretty big news since many people believed he would give at least a tepid endorsement of the Republican ticket, if not a full-throated endorsement. It comes just a couple of days after Laxalt had said to the Reno Gazette-Journal that he hopes to earn the governor's vote. Well, we don't know how the governor's going to vote, but we sure know he's not going to endorse in that race.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about now the longtime CEO of the Las Vegas Convention Authority.
Yeah, he has finally left the agency after a long tenure. The board of directors accepted a separation agreement with Rossi Rollencotter effective at the end of the month.
Yeah, he got near unanimous support. He's been with the authority for 45 years, including 15 as the CEO.
Leadership's incredibly critical. Leadership with results.
An impassioned speech by LVCVA board member and Las Vegas Mayor Carolyn Goodman, kicking off a long debate ahead of approving CEO Rossi Rollencotter's separation agreement from the authority. Goodman and others sticking up for Rollencotter, saying he's been an exemplary employee, and the stats over the years, they say, prove it.
If in fact there's some flaws and holes, and we didn't put the policies in place, it doesn't belong to any one person.
What Goodman is referring to is an audit and a Review Journal investigation that pointed to $17,000 of misappropriated airline gift cards Rollencotter used for personal travel. And the paper has questioned nearly 300 hours of unreported paid time off, some of which came on personal trips on those gift cards. Goodman and other board members blame the issue on a lack of preventative policies in place at the time. Board Chairman and County Commissioner Lawrence Weekly says it's all a witch hunt.
Someone of his caliber, with the type of integrity that this man possesses, yes, of course it raised a flag, but at the end of the day, for me to support the separation agreement all came from him.
While some board members questioned whether Rollencotter decided to leave due to public fallout from that audit, he assured the board he's leaving on his terms and had been considering it for a while.
Ready to move on. August 31st, we're set. Consulting thing is there. I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Well, Rollencotter will receive a one-time $53,000 payout, is also entitled to his public employee retirement benefits, as well as a $270,000 18-month consulting contract you heard him referencing there at the end with the LVCVA, excuse me. If you're interested in looking at those retirement documents, they're on our website, lasvegasnow.com.
The retirement's all part of an elaborate musical chairs that happened at the top of Southern Nevada's most influential agencies. Steve Hill left the Governor's Office of Economic Development. He was named CEO to replace Rollencotter this week. And former Assembly Minority Leader Paul Anderson took Hill's spot as Executive Director of the agency we call GOED.
Well, a convicted murderer in Nebraska was executed this week, and it could have some reverberations here in Nevada. Carrie Dean Moore was the first execution in the state of Nebraska since 1997. They used a 4-drug cocktail that included fentanyl and cisatracurium. The maker of cisatracurium sued to try to stop the execution, saying it was being misused and would harm the drug maker's business, but the court let the execution go forward anyway.
Well, that decision could be a precedent-setting one here in Nevada. The execution for twice convicted murderer Scott Dozier is on hold here after a drug maker successfully sued to stop the use of a drug called midazolam. That was part of the 3-drug cocktail the state planned to use. The other 2 drugs, as Patrick mentioned, cisatracurium, I don't think I said that right, and fentanyl. Those drug makers are trying to join the lawsuit seeking to stop Dozier's execution as well. In the meantime, the sentence is waiting on the Nevada Supreme Court to weigh in on several things, including the legality of allowing a drug maker here to stop the execution. That's the only time that has stopped an execution in any state. The Supreme Court has scheduled oral arguments for September 12th.
It has been a long week, so trying to pronounce the names of some of these drugs is difficult. Not to make light of a tough situation, but we're trying for you. Sorry about that. Well, trying to defeat question 3.
Question 3 is a drastic proposal that would dismantle and deregulate Nevada's existing electricity system.
I'll do a fact check on an anti-energy choice ad that's in heavy rotation right now. That's next on Politics Now.
FBI, Tuesdays this fall.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
Well, before it's all over in November, the advertising fight over the Energy Choice Initiative will make it the most expensive ballot initiative in the state's history. It's known as Question 3, and it would amend the Constitution to give Nevadans the right to choose the company from which they buy electricity.
But the battle of ads is leaving many Nevadans confused about what the measure would actually do. Today, we look at an ad from the coalition to defeat Question 3.
Question 3 is a drastic proposal that would dismantle and deregulate Nevada's existing electricity system. The state's own study shows 3 would increase our electric rates.
Well, that word deregulate is a point of contention. The Gwynn Center on Policy Priorities said the initiative would restructure rather than deregulate the energy market because the legislature would be tasked with coming up with regulations before the measure goes into effect in 2023. That's if it passes. The center also said it was impossible to say whether rates would increase or decrease. That's because prices depend on several factors, including wholesale energy rates. But one important regulation would be gone. The Public Utilities Commission, which now must approve every price increase requested by monopoly NV Energy, would no longer have the ability to control prices. Proponents say competition would lower rates, but opponents say it's just as likely prices would go up. Residential rates in some energy choice states are higher than Nevada's current prices, but lower in some others. And the ad goes on.
Question 3 would also eliminate Nevada's current rooftop solar program that serves thousands of homes. And it would shut down plans for 6 major solar energy projects designed to double Nevada's clean energy production.
Well, once again, there's no agreement at all on rooftop solar. Opponents say that since NV Energy would no longer sell electricity, it would no longer be around to pay users who sell excess electricity back onto the grid. Proponents say new companies in an open market would take up those contracts, and they point to a state law passed in 2017 that seeks to guarantee that customer's right. But the author of that bill told us that because Question 3 is a constitutional amendment and that it specifies nothing can interfere with an organization's ability to sell energy, that the state law may be moot. The second charge, however, is absolutely true. NV Energy announced some ambitious projects in May, projects which the company wouldn't pursue if the measure passed. Now, that doesn't mean other companies wouldn't build solar projects to meet the new energy demand, but Question 3 opponents say the expense of building big plants and spreading the cost over many decades makes sense primarily for a single monopoly utility which has a guaranteed customer base and a guaranteed revenue stream.
Yeah, we have a lot more interviews on Question 3 and ad checks, explainers, all about it. There's a lot to unpack. It's on LasVegasNow.com, so you may want to go check those out as well. Making schools safe.
Whatever you've got to do, that's number 1.
I have not seen enough from any politician out there to really do something about this.
The Face-Off panel takes on Nevada's politicians and their plans to keep our children safe.
CBS Mondays this fall.
Well, on the first day of school this week, a student was arrested for bringing a gun to Green Valley High School. So are any politicians or leaders pitching a plan that would improve school safety? We asked our face-off panel, KXNT radio host Alan Stock and Battleborn Progress Executive Director Annette Magnus.
Have you heard an acceptable plan from any candidate in any of the offices that would be able to do something to that effect?
I haven't, and this is regardless of party. I have not heard real sophisticated plans, and I think we should be hearing more about this, not just from, like you said, any office. I want to hear solid plans of how they're going to go about, you know, securing our schools. And putting a police officer there is not enough. That's not going to work. You had that in Parkland and the guy ran away. Like, that is, we have to really think through these situations and think about, like Alan said, can we put things around the schools to make sure that the entrances are solid? At my elementary school, the one that my mom still works at, I was telling you guys the other day that you can get in literally from any entrance. All of the classrooms face outside. There is an entry point literally at every point. And so that to me is very dangerous, and we really need to be rethinking the way we're building our schools, the way we're modifying these older schools to make sure they're safe, the way we're training the staff to make sure we're taking care of these situations. And I have not seen enough from any politician out there to really do something about this nationally and locally.
Same question.
I'm in total agreement with that. I don't know of any politician that has been definitive as to what they were going to do. I did hear the other day from people that were being interviewed at Parkland that they have added several new armed guards there. They won't say how many. They've got cameras now all over the place. They won't say where or how many, but they're more on top of security than they were. I want to mention this real quick because the high school I went to, again, had many entrances and exits, as you're talking about. And after things began to go downhill with the area, they wound up putting a huge fence up. And when I first saw it, I thought to myself, this is many years ago, I thought to myself, well, that's gross. I didn't have that when I was going to school. It looks terrible. Many years later, today, as we sit here now, after all the shootings, I look back and I say, you know what, that was a smart move back then, and that's something we have got to consider now. And you're right, no politician, Democrat, Republican, liberal, or conservative, has come up and said, okay, damn it, this is what we've got to do, because we've got to make sure the schools are safe. And don't tell me about the payment for it again. Take it away from other areas. If you had to add taxes to make the schools safe, whatever you've got to do, that's number one.
A lot of times the threat is actually coming from within the school. There are young people who go to that school or who are attending that school. So we also need to be thinking about it from that direction too, is, you know, are there guidance counselors and mental health counselors on staff that are helping some of these young people maybe that are exhibiting signs that they could, you know, perpetrate something like this? Are there things built into the school as well so that if young people are struggling, or if there's a way to stop it before it escalates into a young person bringing a gun into a school, can we stop it that way too? And so we need to be thinking about solutions, not just let's build a fence, let's build a wall, let's build something around it. That's fine, but the threat also comes from inside too, and so we need to think of good, creative, real solutions that are going to make a difference for kids as well.
I agree with that, and I think that they're doing that to a degree now. At least this kid who had the 9mm and brought a loaded gun and brought it to school, he was identified by the people. Whether they profiled him or I don't know what they did. I don't know who the kid is, anything about him, because he's underage and they can't talk about it. But they identified it, and they prevented a potential tragedy from happening. So whatever they did right. I mean, should we expand on that, as you're suggesting? The answer is yes. I mean, again, you do everything you can to make sure that the school is safe, from without and from within. Otherwise, everything else doesn't matter at all.
We can also watch Alan and Annette debate if Las Vegas City Councilwoman Michelle Fiore should remain on the health board in the wake of controversial comments on vaccines, and Rossi Rollincotter's retirement package from the LVCVA that we told you about earlier in the broadcast. That's on LasVegasNow.com. Look for political news under the News tab. Patrick?
All right, Steve, it's the race now, where we go over some of the other big stories happening this week. The Las Vegas Metro Chamber of Commerce has joined the opposition to Question 3, the Energy Choice Ballot Initiative. The organization said it has concerns about the impact of amending the state constitution as opposed to going through the legislative process. A Las Vegas man who admitted to falsifying signatures on the petition to qualify the Nevada Green Party for the 2016 general election ballot was given probation. Ronaldo Johnson was given 12 to 34 months in prison, but that term was suspended as long as he stays out of trouble. And as we approach November, one debate is now set. It'll take place right here on Politics Now. Steve and I will host a Congressional District 3 debate with Susie Lee and Danny Tarkanian. We'll have it airing across 2 consecutive Saturdays. That's September 22nd and September 29th. We'll have more information as it approaches. Our station has also put out debate proposals for both the Senate and congressional races. Also of note, the Review-Journal and Channel 3 have announced plans to host a gubernatorial debate. Laxalt has accepted, but so far, Sisolak has not. So, Steve, the only one on the books for us, CD3. We're creeping up on election time, though. Do you anticipate that we're going to be seeing debates across all of the major races?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the debates are a rite of passage. They're one of the few places voters can, see their elected representatives or would-be representatives in action. So I don't see, candidates avoiding all debates.
Makes sense that they would want to get out there in front of the public as much as they can and answer some of those questions that they don't get to answer sometimes very often.
Absolutely.
Well, a huge fundraiser for Adam Laxalt is next weekend. We'll tell you who will be at the annual Basque Fry next.
You're watching Politics Now.
Well, a date has been set for confirmation hearings for appeals court judge Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court nomination.
So what happens between now and then? I asked our Washington, D.C. correspondent Alexandra Limon to lay it all out for us. I think the big topic to talk about this week is Judge Kavanaugh and leading up to the hearings. What is the timetable, Alex, looking like now as far as when this is going to happen and what's happening leading up to that point?
Well, Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing is now set and scheduled to begin on September 4th. And what we can expect is that it will last a few days, maybe 3 or 4 days. The first day will be opening statements, things like that. And after that, then senators will begin their questioning of Judge Kavanaugh, and they'll really hone in on where he stands on issues like abortion and Obamacare. But leading up to that, you can expect that Democrats and Republicans will continue to fight with each other over this issue of what records should be released from Judge Kavanaugh's background, specifically his time in the Bush White House. Now, Democrats are fighting to get more of these documents for a couple of reasons. One is really they're just trying to delay, right? Hoping to hold this off, hoping to hold off the confirmation hearing and vote for Judge Kavanaugh until after the midterms, because they hope they at least have some shot of getting control of the Senate.
And how important is it that he does so? We know that obviously it's a thin majority for Republicans, but given a lot of factors, how important is it really for Kavanaugh to see some of these Democrats?
Well, look, technically, Republicans don't need any Democrats to vote in favor of Kavanaugh. They have that 51 majority in the Senate, and that's all they need. However, with Senator McCain out, if they lose even one more vote, they could potentially need some Democrats, at least one, just depending on how the vote goes. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski are Republicans that we're really keeping an eye on. So, yeah, they could potentially need Democrats. And so this past week, Kavanaugh just started meeting with some key Democrats. We're talking about Senators Joe Manchin, Joe Donnelly, and Heidi Heitkamp. These are all Democrats from states where President Trump won, in some cases by a pretty wide margin. So they're in a really sticky, precarious situation, so much so that some of these senators wouldn't even allow journalists in the room to spray some video or photos of them meeting with Judge Kavanaugh, never mind take any actual questions.
Well, Kavanaugh has already met with our Republican Senator, Dean Heller. Democrat Catherine Cortez Masto says no meeting has been scheduled yet, but they're hoping to meet with Kavanaugh in September following those hearings.
Time now for What to Watch, where we tell you what we are keeping an eye on for the next week. Next Saturday is the Basque 5 fundraiser in Gardnerville for Governor candidate Adam Laxalt's Morning in Nevada PAC. This is video that we received from the PAC from last year's Basque Fry. This year's guest speakers are President Trump's 2016 campaign manager Kellyanne Conway, Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, and California Congressman Devin Nunes.
Well, and no disrespect to any of those guests. They're not, good guests, good gets, but the Basque food is really the star of that show.
The food is what's
if you haven't had it, it's absolutely delicious. Well, that's our show. Thanks for watching Politics Now. You can email me, ssebelius, LasVegasNow.com.
My email is pwalker@LasVegasNow.com. Stay up to date online and watch us right back here next Sunday.